Welcome to Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. We're talking today about the business climate in America as the states start to reopen. There's a lot of question about how business activity will pick up, how quickly, and where the opportunities will be for investors and for workers in the future economy that adapts to what is going to be a changed terrain. We're talking today to someone who has been involved in investment in lots of different companies, including some that have done quite well. Semil Shah is the founder of Haystack. It's a Bay Area investment firm, and he joins us now from the Bay Area. Semil, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Good to see you.
You have been involved with lots of different companies, and we're going to talk about a couple of them that are become quite prominent in the last few weeks. But I just want to ask you most generally, what are you seeing in terms of investment opportunities? Are people now holding back? Are people looking for new opportunities? What's the state of play of investment money around the country?
Around the country, what I know in the world I know is the world of private investments and early stage technology company and startups, everything from where you see on Shark Tank to what you'd see in Y Combinator. And what I would say is it's kind of a mix of two worlds. On the one hand, there is a lot of what people call dry powder, in committed capital to investment funds, probably between 100 and 200 billion dollars of capital that's ready to deploy. On the other hand, I think a lot of the smartest investment firms that we track and that have been around the block for decades are sort of waiting a little bit. I think they're still active, but they're slower. And this is important for entrepreneurs to know. And I think they have a feeling about the economy fundamentals being very shaken right now, and that the prices will continue to drop. And so they don't want to make large commitments or write a $10 million check into an early stage company until the things settle a little bit. And so it's kind of a mix of both of those two feelings.
I wrote a list of business ideas that was meant to be jokey in Wide World of News a few weeks ago, but I snuck in a few that I think actually could be good ideas. And obviously with almost anything now, technology is going to be a big part of it. One thing it seems to me that's going to have to be done is people are going to have bonded services for anything that involves somebody coming into your house, a plumber or a delivery person. Is that something that you've heard about or thought about how technology could play a role in making people confident that the person coming to their house is not going to be spreading the virus?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of activity, just in a general answer to your question about people dreaming and pontificating and thinking about what is a new world because it has sort of rearranged things. And if there is any silver lining to today's news, I mean, it's hard to see that, but there are new opportunities for people. I think the way venture capitalists like myself think about things are, on one of two vectors. Do we meet somebody that's just completely captivating that changes our prior notion of something? And or do we meet somebody who has a unique view on how to distribute a technology or service, where the cost of the distribution or the acquisition of the customers is efficient? I think in the sense that you're mentioning about people entering your home, you could extrapolate that to saying, well, how do you interact at a restaurant? How do you take your kids to school? And all these sort of things. And so there are a number of ideas floating around. There already is a startup, actually, that I sadly passed on in 2013 in New York City called Kinsa, which is a connected thermometer. Something as very simple as that. You can imagine, Mother Nature gave us this ability to take our temperature and broadcast it. Would we be broadcasting that in real time, sort of like we used to do with Foursquare? Another example could be, will it be possible that in the future our employers or even the government will subsidize us to have an Apple Watch or a Google Watch that will also enable us to enable developers to access something like HealthKit in iOS and build applications on top of that, in addition to contact tracing. So you could say, hey, Mark, you've been around these people. Here's your likelihood of exposure to something. But also, we've noticed that you've been sleeping poorly, or we noticed that your temperature is going up, or we notice that you may have signs of hypertension. These are things we want to believe will happen. It's just still very, very early. Right. And so we'll have to see. I mean, this whole next decade, we could be having the conversation we're having today for the next 10 years.
When the presidents give States of the Union speeches, they say the State of the Union is X. One word. What is the state of the early stage investment community right now?
They're in a very good position.
I think more than one word, but tell me why.
I think that the dry powder is there. We all have a long-term view. We're not trying to predict what's going to happen in December or December 2021. We have to take a 5 to 10 year view. And the benefit of being in the private markets is you're not judged every quarter or every month. Um, and so there is a lot of opportunity. And so the state of the venture capital union and the early stage union is technology is now a horizontal force across the globe. People are digitally native from the moment they arrive to the world. The internet is here to stay. It's can't put the genie back in the bottle. And we're past the installation phase of this technology, so people can do things without permission. And so if you take a 10, 20-year view, it's really exciting. I think the counter to that, or right now for investors or entrepreneurs who are heavily concentrated in something that's been affected by this pandemic, it's really hard. So yesterday our world was captivated by the fact that Airbnb, which is a very iconic global company, and a company that every founder here wished they started and every investor like me wished they found, had to cut off 25% of their workforce. And that's a big hit. And so companies that are in the crosshairs of this right now, we're trying to raise capital, it's much tougher.
I mean, it seems to me they've got a big problem. Obviously, laying off that many people means they foresee a slow rebound. And unlike other aspects of the travel and of the lodging industry, they don't have the properties they're dealing with for the most part are ones that people are just going to have to go back to trusting, and that's going to, I think, be a lot harder than it would be to trust a hotel chain.
I think it depends. Like, you could take the alternate view and say, like in the cruise ships where you have a closed HVAC system, or in places where people congregate, like prisons and meatpacking plants that maybe don't have proper circulation, the infection rates of this stuff is actually quite high, and you get outbreaks. Versus being in a home, you could do a long-term rental and things like that. So I think there are other ways to talk about that.
Yeah.
That being said, I think everyone looks up to Airbnb as an aspirational company. My daughter knows what it is, my mom knows what it is, and so it's kind of a ubiquitous brand. And so when they make a move, it sort of signals something. I think on top of that, they're making an assessment about the health of business and leisure travel. Will people be, people were debating just 2 months ago, should we have South by Southwest 2020? I don't even think it's clear you have South by Southwest 2021 now, right?
Yeah,
And
I
you
agree
lose
with
all that revenue. And so they're just right in the crosshairs and the consumer behavior and the demand shock that comes from this.
Right.
So
I want to ask you about two companies that you've been involved with from early days and still involved with, who seem to be poised to continue to do well now. Everybody's trying to order food into their house, either from the supermarket or from restaurants, and DoorDash and Instacart are companies that you've been involved with from the beginning. So let me start with Instacart. For those who don't know, involves ordering food from a supermarket, almost any supermarket of your choice in your area, and a personal shopper will go buy what you want. Is Instacart's place in that competitive field, that competitive space? Is Instacart doing better in the last couple months, or same market share? How is what happened impacted Instacart?
I think for Instacart specifically, outside of Zoom, which my daughter and my mom know what Zoom is now, I think Instacart is having its moment. I think the Google searches for Instacart are up 400%. I've heard from people, I'm an early investor in the company, I'm not close to it anymore, but like that they've met their 2020 goals even before March hit. And so you're seeing an incredible surge in demand. And so the unique part of this business is the unique elements are the frequency, where the head of the household may be purchasing once a week or twice a week. It's actually more frequent than most ride shares. Right. The average ride share customer was about 1.86 rides per month versus food delivery, which could be once a week. And then you have like the free cash flows that are coming, so that you don't necessarily value the business just on the volume going through the door or the margin you take out of it. It's actually the free cash flow to keep things going, like oxygen. And then you have the massive value shift, where you have an essential service where people are cutting back on other things, like maybe lowering their cable bill or doing other things to tighten their wallets and their purses. And this is one of the last things that they're going to skimp on,
Right.
especially when we're all cooped up at home.
Right. And DoorDash, which competes in that very competitive space of working with restaurants to allow people to order food. How is DoorDash faring in this climate?
DoorDash had a tougher road to get here because there was more competition. If we remember over the last 5 years, we had Postmates, we had Caviar, Square Buck Caviar, then they sold it back to DoorDash. We had Uber Eats. Uber Eats is propping up Uber right now. And so, and you have Grubhub falling over this time. So it's a very large market. It's a very known market. DoorDash is an extremely well-run company, was already profitable in a lot of the locations that it was in prior to this pandemic, and is providing essential services to people who need to eat. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are young entrepreneurs who literally don't know how to. I mean, I don't think they can make mac and cheese, and so this is how people are gonna get their food. I think both of these companies will face different sort of opportunities and challenges over the next few years as this pandemic runs its course. And we'll have to see whether they take advantage of those opportunities and sort of ward off those risks.
Lastly, just in the question of restaurant delivery, it seems to me that obviously you need the restaurants to exist. Is there any concern for DoorDash and its competitors that there won't be as many restaurants around to serve people, or the restaurants will take their place? What's your view of that?
Yeah, this is a tough topic for me because I grew up working in restaurants. I have a dream of owning a restaurant. I've worked as a cook before, and so it's central to a part of my identity. I think the reality is that most restaurants are not coming back. Restaurants are irrational businesses to start.
Right.
I think that you will see people in communities wanting to support people who are rebuilding their restaurants or starting again, but it's not going to be at the same rate. And so what we're going to probably see over the next few years is more automation around the making of food to lower your cost of goods sold.
Right.
And in the case of someone like DoorDash, it doesn't really matter if you order a few sandwiches for the football game where the sandwiches were made. And
Right.
so you could have these things called cloud kitchens that are popping up in New York and in the Bay Area that become more centralized cooking hubs. And you don't necessarily eat there. If you're a customer of Good Eggs, for example, Good Eggs has their own kitchen in their own distribution center. And so you can buy milk from Clover, and you can buy blueberries from a certain farm, or you can buy stuff that they make as well. And so that's a way to reduce your cost of goods sold and increase the margin when you're adding more items to the basket.
I wish we could talk more, but we're going to stop there. Semil Shah, the founder of Haystack, a San Francisco area investment firm. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, Mark.
And thank you for watching Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. We'll have more discussions right here. Same bad time, same bad channel coming up soon.